Hey everyone, today we are going to be focusing on the learning target 3NBT, which stands for numbers in base 10.1. And our I can statement says, I can use place value understanding to round whole numbers to the nearest 10 or the nearest 100. So what I'm going to do in this video is break down this standard and show how we are teaching the students in school with a strategy that we really like. And that strategy is using number lines. We use an open number line to round. Some people in the past have used little rhymes and tricks to kind of help with rounding, but we think this number line is a really conceptual way for the students to understand the numbers and understand the idea of rounding. So really all that rounding is finding the nearest 10 or the nearest 100 for third grade. Those are the two place values that we focus on, are the 10s and the 100s. So I'm going to walk through rounding a number to the nearest 10 or to the nearest 100, show some examples. So if you never need to reteach, or parents and guardians, tutors, whomever, if you're working with students outside of school, this is how we like to see it done. This is a good strategy, and it really aligns with the Common Core, which really focuses on understanding for the student. And that's what we really wanted to get at with them, is how are they understanding the concept. So I'm going to walk through that. We're going to use an open number line. I'm going to show you how to find the benchmarks, and then we're going to find the midpoint, and then we're going to work on some rounding strategies. So for our benchmarks, I have my open number line here. The open number line just means that there are no numbers on it yet. But for our benchmarks, we're going to put 3 lines, 2 lines on the ends, and 1 in the middle. So we're going to put numbers here that are going to help us to round. So let's say we're going to round the number 28 to the nearest 10. We're going to round 28 to the nearest 10. First step, we have to find the 10 below 28 and the 10 above 28. And how we do that is just thinking about skip counting. So if we're skip counting, that's just, if we're skip counting by 10s, I'm going 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So I'm going to find the 10 before. Those are your 10s. So the 10 before 28, if I plant 28, 10 before 28 is 20. You can look in the 10s place. That's a 2, so 20. And then the 10 after 28 is just the next 10 up. So it's 10, 20, 30. So 30 is the next 10 after 28. And what we're wanting to do, we want to put 28 on this number line because its range is 10. There are 10 units on this number line that we have here. So I'm going to plot 28 on our number line. So, well, time out. Before we do that, we find the 10s before the number and after the number. If it was hundreds, we would do the 100 before the number and after the number. And we have to do our midpoint right here. This is our midpoint of the number line. And that's just whatever is in the middle. So if we have 10, a number line that has a range of 10, we're just gonna, what's in the middle of that? So if I'm taking 10 jumps to get to 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're at 5 right here. So what's the number? We've taken 5 jumps between 20 and 30. That was 25. So 25 goes in the middle on this one, because anything with, if our range is 10, what's in the middle is going to be 5 units. So 25 goes in the middle here. So now what I'm going to do is plot my points so we're looking at the number 28. So it falls, if we think about the number, is 28 bigger than 25? If I have $28, I have more money than if someone who has $25. So 28 has a greater value than 25. So it's going to be on the number line where our numbers are getting bigger. So it's going to be closer to 30. It's going to be about right there. So in rounding, if the number is at the midpoint or above, so if it's at the midpoint or above, you're going to round up. If it's before the midpoint here, you're going to round down. But since 28 is bigger, 25 or bigger, it is going to round up to 30. And I'm going to show you some more examples. So 28, that's right here. It's going to round up to 30. Let's do another example. Going to round another 1 to the nearest 10. So let's round 73 to the nearest 10. I'm going to find my benchmarks here, so to my two endpoints and my midpoint here. Find the 10 before 73 is going to be 70. The 10 after 73 is going to be 80. What's going to be in the middle of 70 and 80? We're just going to make 5 jumps, so it's going to be 75. Because we know if we're counting to 10, 5 is going to be the halfway point. So the distance from 70 to 75 is 5 units. So now we need to see where 73 falls on that number line. And it's going to fall, so 73 falls between 70 and 75. Goes about right here. That's 73. So since it comes before the midline, our midpoint here, we know that, so our midpoint goes from 70 to 74, because we know that 75 and above rounds up. 73 is closer to 70. So we are going to 73 will round down to 70. So the idea is that we want to figure out which 10 it's closest to for this one. Is it closer to 70 or 80? And with the number line, we can see that it's closer to 70. So there's another example of rounding to the nearest 10. Now we're going to round to the nearest 100. Same idea here. We're going to find our endpoints, except this time we're just looking at rounding to the nearest 100. So let's round 381 to the nearest 100. So same thing as with we're rounding to tens. We're going to make our benchmarks and our midpoint here, our endpoints and our midpoint. So now I need to figure out the 100 that becomes before 381. So what I like to do for this one, you're just looking at the hundreds place. That's the 100 before 381, so that's just going to be 300. We're skip counting by 100s. 100, 200, 300, and then our other endpoint is going to be the 100 that comes next. So that would be 400 if I'm skip counting. 100, 200, 300, 400. Now, what comes in the middle of 100 units? So what's a halfway point? If you're on a football field, what's the middle of the field called? One end zone starts at 0 and the other end zone is at 100. Halfway in the middle is called what? The 50-yard line. So there are 50 units in between each 100 that we have. So the middle of the hundreds is going to be 50. So in this case, we have 100 units between 300 and 400. So our midpoint here is going to be 350. So now all we have to do is similar to the tens, rounding to the nearest 10, we're going to plot that point on our number line. So where does 381 fall? Is it bigger than or less than 350? Well, if I have $381, I have more money, I have a greater value than someone that has $350. So that's going to fall on this side of the number line, of the midpoint on the number line. And we know that if it's at the midpoint or above, we're going to round up. And if it's right below our midpoint and behind, it's going to round down. So since 381 lands here, it's going to round up to 400. Round up to 400. Let's do one more. So let's say that I have the number 649. 649. I'm going to make, on my number line, going to have my endpoints, my midpoint, the 100 that comes before 649. We're going to start at 600. And the one that comes after, skip count by 100s. 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. We're going to go to 700. Okay? What's in the middle of 100? It's 50. If we have a football field, 100 has 100 yards. The 50-yard line is going to be in the middle, so we're going to have 650 is going to be in the middle here. So now we need to see where 649 is going to fall on this number line. 649. So let's think. If I have $649, do I have less money or more money than someone who has $650? Well, 649 is smaller. It has a smaller value than 650. We're really close to 650, but we're not there. So 649 will be right here on the number line. But since it's less than 650, it's going to round down to 600. So 649 rounds to 600 because it is closer to 600 on the number line than 700. That's what we need to know. When we're rounding to the nearest 10 and to the nearest 100, we're seeing which benchmark, which endpoint we're closer to. It's thinking about distance. Which one are we closer to? If there are two ways to get home from school, I want to go to the shortest route. Okay, same idea. Think about the number line, think about distance, which endpoint are we closer to. Those ideas will help us with rounding a lot. So let a teacher know if you have any questions. I hope this helps clear up or learn how we're teaching rounding at school. And you can practice, or if you need a refresher, this is a good video to watch. Let me know if you have any questions. Happy to help.